Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. We just had a signing ceremony in the rotunda of the Capitol for the Fairness in Girls Sports legislation. Thankful to see this bill get support from the legislators and make it to my desk, and that now we will ensure that we have fairness and a level playing field for female athletes here in the state of South Dakota at the K-12 level and at the university level. That bill will be enacted, and I'm grateful for everybody's help and support on that issue. We also have been working on bills and legislation related to critical race theory and banning the education of that in our K-12 system and university system, and action civics. That is moving forward. We're grateful to have the support of leading people across the country that care about our students learning about a true and honest history, and ensuring that we don't have curriculum or policies in our school districts that are teaching that someone is better than another person based on their race, their culture, or their sex, and that also our students are not taught that they are responsible for different actions of our ancestors. We want to ensure that all of our students in the state of South Dakota learn a true history, recognizing there may be flaws in our history, but we can learn from them and always strive to do better. Yesterday, you saw that we did not get action on a piece of legislation that had to do with protecting life. I was extremely disappointed by that action in the House State Affairs Committee, because that hasn't happened in South Dakota for many, many years. It was an unprecedented historic action taken that sets a bad precedent here in South Dakota. The reason that I was disappointed is because that's one of the things I complained about for so many years about Washington, D.C. One of the reasons that our federal government is a mess is because they don't follow rules. And they have a rules committee in the House when I was there for many years that if they wanted to pass a bill under different rules, they went to the rules committee, wrote a new bill, wrote a new piece of legislation or rule, and had the vote on the House floor. They also didn't give bills hearings. There was members who had very valid policy arguments to make and could introduce a bill for 20 years and it may never see the light of day. The only way you could get something debated or discussed in an open forum was if the chairman of that committee or the majority leader or the speaker liked you and helped you get a debate or a hearing so that the policy could be discussed. I always bragged about the fact that in South Dakota that wasn't our story, that here every bill got a hearing. Everybody's idea got consideration. You had the chance to talk for it. You had the chance to talk against it. And at the end of the day, you voted, and that was the decision of the people and the legislature here. Yesterday, that process was changed, and it grieved me to see it, because I no longer could say that I was proud of South Dakota for having open debate and being willing to have those discussions, especially when it comes to protecting life in the womb. With that, we have many other policy discussions that are going. One of the things I want to remind everybody is that I had a budget address in December where I laid out some of the priorities for funding that I think we needed to focus on in the state of South Dakota. Next week, we will be getting revenue projections in. Those are projections of revenues from the month of December. We anticipate that they will be good, but I'm also encouraging legislators to be conservative in how they spend their dollars. They will see revenue numbers that will be good, reflecting a lot of Christmas spending, end of the year spending, but that doesn't mean that the kind of growth that we've seen in revenue in the state of South Dakota will continue. We're seeing federal policies that are driving up inflation. We know interest rates will be increasing. Energy costs are going up. And remember, South Dakota is a heavily energy dependent state. The people in our state, a bigger share of their budget, their family budget, is consumed by energy costs. It's cold in the wintertime, it's hot in the summer, and it's a long ways to drive anywhere. Therefore, families here, when energy costs increase, it hits them harder than it does virtually any other family in any other state. So we need to make sure that we understand that will impact revenues coming into the state as families tighten their belts in the coming years. And we need to make sure that we're budgeting appropriately, having a reasonable, typical revenue growth model that we've always followed for many years in South Dakota that's made sure we made wise decisions with taxpayer dollars. I also want to remind people about financial commitments that we have. I talked in my budget address as well about how we need to be looking at some of the facilities that our Department of Corrections has. That we did a prison study, And in the coming years, 2 to 3 years, we need to address about $600 million worth of build within our Department of Corrections in order to adequately take care of prisoners and personnel that we have in that area in the state of South Dakota. And that will be a significant investment that the state will have to figure out how to come up with those dollars to do it. I put 14% into reserves this year, anticipating the cost of those prisons, asking the legislature to be proactive, to start saving money now so that we don't have to bond for that. And remember, if legislators say that we can bond for prisons in the future, that's a challenge because we bond for that much. That ties up the bonding authority that the state has that can't be utilized by universities or technical schools and limits their ability to grow and to make sure that the education needs of our students are met in the state. We also have debate up here and in the state about Medicaid expansion. The anticipated cost of Medicaid expansion in the state of South Dakota, if that is pursued by the people here or legislators in the building, is about $80 million in the state of South Dakota. That will be a cost that will have to be budgeted for, and I would like legislators to look objectively at the fact that that may be something in the coming years that they'll have to figure out how to pay for. We also have other bills that have policy implications that may impact banks, their ability to be chartered in the state. What that means to the revenues that come into the state government are pretty significant as well. And all of those things, when they're having discussions in appropriations committee and putting together a budget this year that we'll need to agree on, need to be considered so that we're not in the situation here in the next 2 or 3 years where we're backing the state into a situation where they have to raise taxes to make sure that we're adequately paying and taking care of the needs of the state of South Dakota. So I would hope that the legislature would continue to focus on recognizing the costs we have in front of us, making wise decisions today so that we can keep taxes low and keep the burden low on the people that live here and make good decisions to continue that far into the future. With that, I'll open it up for any questions you have.
On the topic of taxation.
Governor Noem, this is Morgan at the Argus Leader.
Hi, Morgan. I'm going to go to Joe in the room and then I'll come to you.
Thank you. Representative Carr dropped a bill that would reduce the sales tax rate from 4.5 to 4%. Where are you at on that? Do you support that bill, or do you think, maybe given what you just said about preparing for the future, I don't know where you would be on that?
Well, I certainly examine and look at all opportunities to lower taxes. That's something that I'm always anxious to do. And we went through this analysis for many, many months, seeing what the future looks like for South Dakota. We'll watch that bill, we'll watch the debate that happens, but also looking at what the next 5 years, 6 years looks like for South Dakota as far as revenue. I know that the legislators are a little bit more bullish on what revenue will look like in 2 or 3 years. I'm probably a little bit more cynical on that. I recognize that we have a lot of policies changing at the federal level. We've already seen inflation dramatically hit energy costs. There's talk that our farmers won't be able to get fertilizer in 2 or 3 years because of the supply chain overseas is going to be limiting that. Our ability to grow crops and to sell them is going to be challenged if that happens. We also know our markets will be heavily impacted by overseas production and how that's marketed across the world. We've seen a lack of transportation availability that drives up those costs. All of that sucks money out of the sales tax bucket that funds state government, and it's going to be a challenge in the coming years. So our typical average revenue growth is 4% to 5%. We may see a better revenue growth than that for the coming budget year, but it would be wise to look 2 or 3 years down the road and anticipate the needs that we have financially in front of us that we'll be responsible for, and make sure that we have the money saved and accounted for to take those on as well. I've been pretty palms up about what we have to do in our prison systems. We know that we have overcrowding going on. We know our facilities are in tough shape and falling down, and it limits our ability to do the right thing by the people that utilize those facilities. So the legislators need to consider those upcoming costs and how we take care of that need and the responsibility that we have. Morgan.
Thank you. You mentioned to me when we met at the Dakota State University announcement last week that you do have transgender friends and family. How do you justify citing this bill to them?
This bill's about fairness. It's about allowing biological females and their sex to compete fairly on a level playing field that gives them opportunities for success.
One more on
Yes.
the phone.
Governor,
Okay, one more on the phone and then we'll go to in the room.
Thank you. This is Wendell Husabo with Breitbart News.
Okay.
Governor, earlier today, Leader Smith, your Democrat opponent, the governor's election, supported some mask and vaccine mandates in the state of South Dakota. What do you think about that?
Well, Jamie has long supported mandating things down to people that should be their personal responsibility to make choices on. He's got a very different view of government than I do. He's marched with BLM. He supports more taxes, more spending. I would say that we are very, very far apart when it comes to policies and the approach and the role that the government should have in people's lives.
Governor, Chris Von Dravchik from Foreign News Service. So, and I know this is a tough topic, so respectfully, when it comes to this bill, the
Which
Fairness in
bill?
Sports bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a tough topic, really.
Well,
I mean, it's about fairness. We fought years ago for Title IX.
Sure.
So that women had an opportunity to compete. Now, there's many different competitions where biological sex isn't that big of a deal, and we don't make accommodations for it in debate competitions or academic speech competitions. But in athletics, it does matter.
So-
Biology and science has proven that to us.
And the State High School Activities Association had a policy, right? So why override that policy? Why wasn't that policy working?
This is a statute in the state of South Dakota that will ensure that girls' sports is protected. Years ago, I fought for this back in 2017 and 2018 to protect the state of rodeo. We know the federal government has come in and dictated to different sporting events in the state before that we couldn't have boys and girls events. I fought then and won and protected girls' events in the sport of rodeo. We did it again, and in South Dakota, we'll always ensure that it's a level playing field.
So you were on.
One more question, then we're gonna go to
So
somebody
you were
else.
not confident that the current state policy.
I'm not confident that it wasn't an issue in South Dakota. This will ensure that it's not an issue in South Dakota. Next, yes, Lee.
What recourse will girls who are accused of not being a biological girl have now that this bill will become law?
Girls will have the opportunity, if they're not allowed to play, to have litigation with the school in order to be able to have the opportunity to compete. That is the avenue that they have, to build their case, make their case, and get the chance to play on that team.
So they'll have
Is there a question on the phone?
Yes, could I ask a follow-up?
Sure. Is this Morgan again?
South Dakota is the first, yeah, this is Morgan.
Okay.
South Dakota is the first state to sign such a bill like this for this year. I guess, what does that say about the state's leadership, whether you or its legislators, what does that say about our leadership here?
I think this leadership here in the legislature is united around the fact that this bill is strong, that it adds the protections that we need to state statute, and that it is something that they can support with confidence, knowing that girls deserve an opportunity to compete at a level playing field. Austin?
Yes, Governor Austin Goss, Dakota News Now. You obviously were very cynical, critical of the House State Affairs Committee yesterday for their decision not to hear your proposal on the heartbeat bill. Speaker Gosh, within the last 30 minutes here, put out a statement effectively saying that South Dakota Right to Life opposed your proposal. Both Senate leadership and House leadership oppose your proposal. Said he wants to avoid personal attacks. DC politics are not welcome here, and South Dakota deserves better from their elected officials. I just want to see what you make of that and maybe what it says about your relationship with House and Senate leadership.
I think my relationship with House and Senate leadership is good. It's strained with the Speaker, definitely. What I would say is this is the first time in years that the legislature has refused to give a hearing to a bill. It was introduced under the same protocols, same mechanisms as every other bill governors have brought. This bill and myself were treated very differently than in the past. I know Speaker Gosh has an issue with me, and I honestly don't know what it is. I cannot think of a reason why he is so offended by me and what I do. But I am following the exact same protocols as other governors on this bill and other pieces of legislation. And I think it's important that every bill get a hearing. Now, what is interesting to me on this heartbeat bill is that there are national pro-life leaders that say this is an important bill at this time in the state of South Dakota. Jay Sekulow, who has agreed to defend this bill free of charge, has given his endorsement to this piece of legislation. The Susan B. Anthony group has given their support to this piece of legislation. In fact, in September, you visited and interviewed Dale Barcher with South Dakota Right to Life, who said it was wonderful that Texas brought the bill that they brought and passed it, and said he thought it was great and something South Dakota should be considering. And that's when we went through the analysis and looked at the language and brought it forward. So I know there's disagreement. They have an attorney, an out-of-state attorney, that's telling them that this bill isn't appropriate. We have many other people that say it is. I'm interested in defending life. This would have been a fantastic debate just to have in committee. And we can all disagree and still defend life. We can disagree on strategy, but let's have that in an open forum. And I, as governor, want to have a transparent process. What happened in Speaker Gosh's committee yesterday was not transparent. It was basically a pocket veto that he made a decision on, and frankly, members of his caucus didn't know it was gonna happen.
Follow up to that.
Sure.
You know, even with that in mind, it's very clear that most of the Republicans on that committee are not pro-life. They're very
right, I
very
agree.
against abortion. You know, again, I agree. Obviously, Dale Barcher in September, whatever that was singing this bill's praises. But I guess more than that, do you wish you could do anything different in hindsight? Do you think there's anything you could have done different, whether that had been coordination?
Well, Austin, do you remember that when I talked about this bill in my State of the State address, that it got a standing ovation from legislators?
Yes, ma'am.
So it would indicate to me that the legislators that stood were in support of the bill and that were glad and excited that it was being brought forward. Something dramatically changed, and it wasn't my opinion. I was under the impression that it was supported by many legislators. Something changed, I understand that, but then let's have that debate in committee so we know what it was.
We have time for one more question, Stephen.
Governor, I spoke with Attorney General Ravnsborg earlier today and asked him, you know, it was pointed out that he had asked a member of the DCI about cell phone extractions while he was under investigation. I'm just wondering if you have comment on that in terms of the use of his office and his position.
You know, Stephen, honestly, when it comes to this issue, I'm screwed either way, no matter what I say. If I have an opinion, the speaker accuses me of meddling and says I can't have an opinion. If I do have an opinion, when I've committed to being the most transparent governor we've ever had and believe that the public deserves to know the truth, I don't want to give the speaker a reason not to do the right thing. So if I say something and he uses that as a reason not to do justice to this issue and handle this process correctly, I just don't want to give him that excuse. So it's hard for me to weigh in because I want to be transparent. I think the public deserves to know this issue, but yet I don't want to give the speaker an opportunity to blame me for whatever action he chooses to take.
What do you make of that voicemail?
What voicemail?
Have you heard it? The one Austin and I published on Friday.
Are you talking about the robocall one?
Yeah.
It's a
I've never
telemarketing
heard the
call.
voicemail, but I have repeatedly said that I had nothing to do with those robocalls. I have, and no one on my campaign team did. I don't know who did those or what agenda they had against me. But I'm not gonna speculate, but I did not have anything to do with those robocalls.
So the recording sort of indirectly implicates that the governor, they don't say your name, but it says the governor.
Well, from what I've been told by my communications team, it also clearly said the person on the phone was indicating that whoever was asking for it was running for Senate, wanted to be president. Everybody knows that none of that is true of me. I've repeatedly said I'm not running for president, I'm not running for Senate. So if they're talking about somebody and speculating as to who's behind the calls, none of those qualifiers apply to me.
Thanks, everyone.
Sorry, you talked
We'll do
about-
one more for Stephen, just because he's always so kind to me in his articles. Yeah, they're always so glowing and wonderful.
I appreciate it, Governor.
Yes. I give you so many benefits of the doubt, Stephen. It's amazing. Go ahead. You have a
Thank you.
chance. You
I
got a
appreciate it.
shot.
I mean, okay, so, I mean, does the speaker have you in check on this issue? I mean, how are you kind of, you know, how do you go forward with this?
It's a hard situation for me. It's probably been one of the biggest struggles I've had, just because I know he's looking for a reason to blame me for everything. And it's weird, because we agree on probably 90% of policy issues. There's some reason this guy doesn't like me. And it seems like a personal agenda, but I don't know what it is.
Do you think he should be removed,
Who?
Speaker of the House?
Oh, I'm not gonna speculate on that.
Did-
So, you guys have a great day. That seems like a good spot to end. Thanks, Austin.
Thank you for the.
You bet.